Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and this morning's edition for Friday, the 4th of November, comes to you from London. And what a week it's been in markets. First of all, we start with the dollar. Real sell-off here in the last few days. This has been the first negative week for quite a while, and certainly in the last 4 or 5 weeks. And we see here the dollar index below on the cloud. So that's a real sell-off, pre-election jitters in the US. So weak dollar has been the theme of the week. We've basically retraced a lot of the move that we saw in October, around 50% retracement of that move. So really interesting there. The medium and long-term picture is still bullish, of course, but the short-term picture is bearish. And that, when we look at the euro, translates to euro strength. So we saw the euro below 109 at 110 at one stage. We're back at a sort of 111 mark this morning. So it's really interesting. And we have a new upside target. These two downside targets not activated, but the long-term ones are. We still have a lot of downside targets on the euro, but we do. It would be very interesting to see now. I've got the short-term upside target of a further 1% up on the euro. If we look at the Japanese yen, of course, a proxy for the risk-off trade, really, and we're seeing that yen strengthen. The fall in this chart means that the dollar buys less yen, and we've seen that go from 105.5 to 102.90 at the moment. So we're seeing that move, but we are still again bullish on the dollar. We have made this transition in the medium term, but in the short term we are seeing the downside, and about 0.5% downside, finding support on these lines here. So we may well be near the end of the dollar sell-off for the moment, but a pretty tough week for the dollar all round. If we look at sterling, that translates as well. Positive news from the UK vote yesterday, and on interest rate outlook. So we are seeing sterling in a counter trend move here, but we are still bearish below the cloud here. So a good week for sterling in the end. We do see upside potential to 125.20, and we're nudging this sort of 125 level at the moment. But of course, the picture is still bearish medium term, and that's what we always need to remember. Keep an eye on the 1-minute charts for what's going to happen in the very, very short term. And here we see the euro sterling rate again. Sterling now strengthening against the euro. So sterling just having a strong week after a pretty torrid time. And if we look at against the Swiss franc, we're seeing really appreciation in sterling across the board. So there was a lot of buying of sterling over the last couple of days. And even on the Australian dollar, again, we see that sterling transition. So sterling having a good sort of re-rating at the moment, but of course it is bearish in the medium and long term, so just keep an eye on new short-term targets emerging. If we go to stock markets, we had downside targets on the S&P 500 pretty much all week, and we've seen again that playing through. And if we look at these downside targets, all off this 60-minute data, this data all coming from Thomson Reuters Icon this morning, and we see here that we had all these downside targets to this sort of 2095 area. We're just below that now at 2088. We do have a little bit more downside targets. More importantly, we have broken the trend here. So we've had now 8 days on the trot of the S&P falling, showing up in all these negative candles here. So at some stage we probably will just see some bear closing coming in. But interestingly, we are bearish below the cloud, and the lagging line, I like to say 3 days. So if the lagging line ends up the week lower than here, then that is a bit worrying in the medium term for the S&P 500. These election jitters having quite an effect on the market. And if we look at the Nasdaq tech-laden indices, we're seeing here that we again have this sell-off. We were given a target at 4,800. We were given a target of 46.61. We're at 46.80 at the moment, so that target is starting to play through. The daily chart not bearish yet, and if we look at the Dow, has also fallen below the cloud, not on the daily chart, but look at all these downside targets here, really clear selling thrusts generating signals to the downside. 17,250, 17,468, 17,563 and 17,810. So we're seeing downside anywhere between 0.5% and 4% downside. So still a lot of downside. Watch for any new upside targets giving us some indication. And looking at the futures, we're not seeing any indication that the market's going to open up today. So it's a pretty bearish picture. And the Russell 2000 looking pretty bearish as well. If we take a look at the DAX, we see here also the DAX is bearish below the cloud, so that's looking pretty poor as well. Tokyo has been sort of bucking the trend in recent weeks, where it's been strong above the cloud, but this market now pulling through into negative territory on the short term as well. So pretty well all markets globally are looking pretty bad at the moment. We had that at the start of the week, and this week's it's played through. So at the moment, we're probably ending the week on a very bearish note. Asian markets have closed there. It's all about what the US does. That sentiment is filtering through into commodities. We're seeing crude oil selling off as well. So that's again quite interesting. And we're seeing here WTI back into the mid 40s. So again, quite worrying. And if we look at US nat gas, that's also selling off. So it's really hard to find any sort of bright spots at all. Coffee is probably the one area where we're seeing just a soft commodity that it is outperforming, and it's in a very strong uptrend through on the weekly, through on the daily, and the 60 minutes still looking very strong. We've got a target of about 6.5% upside. Just need new highs to activate that. So that's one market that is looking quite good. Gold, you'd think, would be rocketing with all this negative news. It's just staying pretty flat. We're still holding the 1300 mark, and we do have quite a few short-term upside targets now popping through here. So we shouldn't be surprised to see gold moving to the upside. And silver also probably looking slightly better as a precious metal here as well, and so bullish to the upside. Looking at just the US 10-year note yield, we're sitting at 180 at the moment. So that hasn't reacted as badly as other markets, and we're just seeing here at the moment we've got upside potential to 184 and downside to 179. There is a bigger downside target of 172, nothing stellar. US market really waiting for those non-farm payroll numbers today to see what that means for the market. So it will be interesting to see those come out. And we see here with Apple, we're below on the cloud as well. So quite interesting. We've still got another 3% downside. Perhaps the big story last night was Facebook. Results out the night before after closing, and we see this 5.5% sell-off. So that really has put Facebook onto a negative short-term move here below the cloud. It really has just fallen below the cloud. That just happened just before results, and of course the market sentiment not helping there as well. We are just below the cloud on the price here, but not on the lagging line. So it does at the moment it is within trend, but needs to be watched. We still have a lot of upside targets to play for here, so it'll be interesting to see whether those get unwound. Is this a buying opportunity, or is this beginning of a trend reversal? You'll need to keep an eye on that chart. That's it for today. Until Monday, have a great weekend. Happy charting. See you then.